Well, that's exactly what we're aiming for today. We're taking a deep dive into this really intriguing but ultimately short-lived civilization, the Tangut culture.
Okay, the Tanguts.
Yeah, they existed for a few centuries, from 982 to 1227 AD, tucked between Chongalai and Tibet. We actually have a map here from Yevgeny Kitchenov's book showing their location. See, right here.
Oh, I see. Yeah, right in that sort of crossroads area. Fascinating.
Exactly. And what really grabs you right off the bat is their approach to language. I mean, it's unlike anything else.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they seem to have just taken this incredibly original, almost like a from-scratch approach.
Yeah.
And it really gets to the heart of what Wilhelm von Humboldt was talking about.
Oh, Humboldt. Yeah, the whole idea of language as like a creative force shaping how we understand the world.
Precisely. It's not just about communication. It's about actively shaping thought. And, Gan even described the Tanguts' creation of their language as a great creative act. Really powerful statement, isn't it?
Definitely. We have all sorts of fascinating visuals to help us along, too. Maps, images of their lost city of Karakoto, even examples of their writing system, which is, well, it's something else.
Yeah, we'll get to that. But first, let's unpack this great creative act a bit more. I mean, what makes their approach to language so exceptional, especially considering their location?
Well, a lot of languages, right, they sort of evolve organically over time, borrowing bits and pieces, adapting slowly. But the Tangut language, it seems much more deliberate, almost like they sat down and designed a system from the ground up.
Almost like a conscious invention.
Exactly. And the speed at which it seems to have happened and the sheer complexity they built into it is just mind-blowing. The scholar Kepping, he even suggested that Tangut might be, get this, the most complicated system ever invented by humans.
Wow, that is a bold statement. Most complicated system ever conceived. Especially when you think about all the different writing systems humanity has come up with. What could have driven them to create something so intricate?
It's a question that really makes you think. Did this complexity reflect their unique worldview? Maybe it was a way to differentiate themselves, really set themselves apart from neighboring cultures.
It's fascinating to think about. We tend to take language for granted, like it just is. But to imagine a group of people actively constructing a system of that magnitude, that's huge. And our sources mention that initially we relied mostly on Chinese accounts to understand them.
Right.
I mean, that must have been a pretty limited perspective.
It definitely presented some major challenges. Imagine trying to understand, say, modern France solely through British newspaper articles from the 19th century.
Yeah, you're going to miss a lot of nuances.
Absolutely. A ton of potential for bias, misinterpretations, just not getting the full picture. And while Chinese sources are valuable, they inevitably view the Tanguts through their own lens.
Which makes the 1908 discovery of Karakoto all the more significant.
Karakoto, yes.
The lost Tangut city, found by Kozlov and his team out in the desert. There's this incredible image we have. It's really haunting, this ancient city emerging from the sand after being buried for centuries. And Kozlov was meticulous, even planned out the excavations with such care.
A true testament to the dedication to really understanding this lost culture.
And the finds from Karakoto were just incredible. Over 6,000 documents, imagine that.
Wow, 6,000, that's a whole library's worth, preserved by the desert.
It is a treasure trove of books, manuscripts, scrolls, and not just Tangut, but other languages as well, including, crucially, Tangut Chinese dictionaries.
Oh, wow. The dictionaries, those must have been key.
They were the Rosetta Stone, essentially. Allowed scholars to actually start deciphering the language, moving beyond guesswork.
It's amazing how those dictionaries opened up a whole new understanding of their culture.
And it's pretty remarkable that the largest collection of these Tangut artifacts ended up in Russia. Speaks to the dedication of those scholars, recognizing the value of these finds and preserving them for future generations.
Absolutely. Without their work, our knowledge of the Tanguts would be so much more limited.
So let's talk about this complex language. We have an image here of an original page from the Karakoto library. And you were right, it is dense. These characters are so intricate, almost like little works of art.
They're incredibly detailed, not like the flowing calligraphy you see in some other East Asian scripts. Each character is packed with visual information.
To really get a sense of the complexity, take a look at this table from Nikolai Nevsky's work. It compares the Tangut hieroglyphs for planets with their equivalents in Chinese, Tibetan, Sanskrit, even Russian.
Oh, Nevsky. He was instrumental in deciphering Tangut grammar. A brilliant mind.
And what's striking is how visually elaborate the Tangut forms are,
Yeah.
especially compared to the Chinese characters. Considering they had a strong tradition of planet worship, this visual emphasis in their script might reflect that importance.
It's a compelling thought. And we have another table here comparing zodiac signs. Again, the Tangut glyphs are just bursting with detail compared to the relative simplicity of the Chinese ones. You really get a sense of the effort involved in creating and learning this system.
It really emphasizes their deliberate approach. And it wasn't just for grand cosmic ideas, was it?
No, not at all.
We even have an image of the Tangut symbol for heart from a religious book in the Hermitage. Even a fundamental concept like that is represented by a character that feels multi-layered.
And that's a key point. Many of their characters seem to be logographic, meaning they represent whole words or morphemes. And within these characters, you often see combinations of smaller components, almost like hints at the word's meaning or history. It's a very visually dense system.
It's fascinating, this idea of packing so much meaning into a single visual element.
And get this, for everyday use, they also developed shortened forms of these hieroglyphs for faster writing.
So like a shorthand version.
Exactly, makes sense, right. But here's the thing. We don't understand these shorthand versions as well because we haven't found many dictionaries that explain them fully.
It adds another layer of mystery to this already intricate script.
It really does.
Now, you'd think learning a system this complex would be a major hurdle, but the sources suggest the Tanguts were actually pretty innovative when it came to language education. In fact, they even took inspiration from the famous Chinese 1,000-character classic.
Oh, the 1,000-character classic. Yeah, that's been a cornerstone of literacy in China for centuries.
Yeah.
A poem that uses 1,000 unique characters.
Exactly. And the Tanguts created their own version using 1,000 Tangut hieroglyphs, also structured as a poem. 22 pages long, 6 lines per page, 12 characters per line. Very structured.
Very structured, very deliberate in their approach, as we've seen.
But they didn't just copy the Chinese model, did they?
Yeah.
There was something about the rhyming scheme that they changed.
That's right. While the Chinese classic used rhyming to help memorize the characters, the Tanguts took it a step further. Their version had a double rhyming structure.
Double rhyming, how does that work?
So the last character on each page would rhyme with the first character on that same page. This internal rhyming basically created an extra mnemonic link, making it even easier to remember all those new characters. Especially in a language with no shared written history with its neighbors, that must have been really helpful.
It's really clever. It shows how they adapted and innovated. So what kind of information did this Tangut 1,000-character classic actually convey? Was it just about learning the script? Or did it also teach learners about their culture, their world?
It was designed to be much more than just a vocabulary builder. Think of it as a comprehensive introduction to their society and their beliefs. It covered everything from cosmogony, their understanding of the creation of the universe, to the cycle of seasons, family structures, social customs, even the names of important Chinese and Tangut families.
Yeah.
It's like a cultural encyclopedia wrapped up in a language learning tool.
Wow, that's amazing. And we even have some excerpts here. Some are pretty practical, like, if people are illiterate, they cannot conduct business. It really shows the emphasis they placed on literacy.
Literacy as a key to success. Very practical.
But then you also have these more profound statements. In the past, when heaven and earth were formed, sun and moon appeared at that time, as well as light and darkness. It covers directions, the seasons. They even boast about Tangut bravery, emphasize the importance of marriage, and talk about the accumulation of wealth. You really get a glimpse into their values and priorities.
And what's even more fascinating is comparing the titles of these 2,000-character classics, the Chinese and the Tangut versions.
Oh yeah, that's interesting. The Chinese one is very straightforward. 1,000 characters classic.
Yeah.
But Tanguts, they called theirs Collected Gold Nuggets on the Palm. That's a much more evocative title, isn't it?
It is, and that difference in metaphor really tells you something about how they viewed their language and the process of learning.
So let's break down that title. Collected Gold Nuggets on the Palm. What does that say about their attitude towards their language?
The gold nuggets, that metaphor suggests they saw their language and knowledge as something incredibly precious, valuable. Gold is something to be treasured, right?
Definitely.
And on the palm, that implies it's readily available, offered openly to anyone willing to learn. It speaks to a sense of pride in their unique linguistic identity, but also a willingness to share it, almost like a gift.
That's a beautiful way to put it. Not a secret to be guarded, but something to be shared and cherished. So moving on, let's talk about the name they gave to their own state. I understand there's a bit of a discrepancy between what they call themselves and what others call them.
Ah, yes, a classic case of history is written by the victors, or at least by those with the loudest voices. In 1038, their leader, Emperor Zhao Yuanhao, he declared their independence, proclaiming himself Emperor of the Great Xia in a letter to the Chinese emperor.
So Great Xia was their official name for their state.
Exactly, a powerful statement of their self-perceived status.
But the Chinese, they didn't quite use that name, did they?
No, they consistently referred to them as Xia, which means Western Xia. And it's interesting, that name echoes an ancient Chinese dynasty that existed centuries earlier in a similar location.
So was that intentional?
It's hard to say for sure, but it could have been a way for the Chinese to sort of fit this new power into their existing historical framework. Or maybe it was a subtle way of downplaying their claims of greatness and independence.
So if Great Xia was their official name, what did the Tanguts themselves call their state in their own language?
This is where things get a bit nuanced in translation, but two elements consistently appear. Words for great or high, and the word white.
White. That's interesting.
It is. So we see interpretations like Great City of the High and White or Lofty White Kingdom. The exact universally agreed upon translation is still debated among scholars.
We have some fascinating hypotheses about that white element. One connects it to the white upper reaches of the Yellow River, a major geographical feature for them. Another points to the Great White Mother Mountain, the source of the Yellow River, and a sacred site in their cosmology.
Right, both very geographically and culturally significant.
And then there's a more symbolic interpretation, linking white to their rulers' claims of descent from a heavenly being, or the White Mountain itself, maybe even reflected in rituals involving white clothing or symbolism.
It's possible that all these interpretations are interconnected. The key takeaway is that, much like their intricate script and their thousand-character classic, the name they chose for their state was laden with meaning. It wasn't just a label, it reflected their connection to their land, their origin stories, their beliefs. It's another example of their deliberate approach to shaping their own identity.
It really emphasizes their self-awareness and intentionality, which makes the eventual destruction of their culture all the more tragic.
Absolutely. As the Russian scholars we've discussed have lamented, the brutal end of the Tangut culture and the near annihilation of their people by Genghis Khan in 1227 is a devastating loss. A unique perspective, a unique way of seeing and expressing the world. Just gone.
It's a stark reminder of the fragility of cultures. And while we've presented the information from our sources, we encourage you, the listener, to reflect on these events and their significance in your own way.
Of course, forming your own conclusions is important.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the Tangut world, what are some of the key insights that resonate with you?
For me, it's their sheer creativity and originality, especially when it comes to language. The fact that they created such a complex writing system and then developed such innovative methods of teaching it, it speaks volumes about their intellectual dynamism. It challenges our assumptions about how cultures develop and shows just how much innovation is possible, even within a relatively short historical time frame.
It's truly inspiring. And their collected gold nuggets on the palm, that image of readily offered precious knowledge, it's such a powerful symbol of their attitude towards learning and their values. And the layers of meaning in their state's name just reinforce their deep connection to their identity and their place in the world. It makes you wonder, what other lost cultures, perhaps less well documented, might have developed equally ingenious approaches to life? What can we still learn from their stories, even if they're no longer around to tell them?
That's a question worth pondering. And hopefully it sparks further exploration into the fascinating world of the Tanguts and other lost civilizations.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep those minds